Got it.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone, again. As you know, Dan Winter here, fractalfield.com, fractalu.com, and our new Science of Consciousness Academy.com. And I'm here with some amazing people. Very old friend Michael Rice, biologic architecture, and now doing amazing spiritual mentoring, Mentorus. Yes, welcome, Michael from Portugal.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, we you can view this two ways. Am I very old and also a friend, or have I been a friend for a long time? So, yeah.
How many years we've 20 or 30 years we've been, and
I
Michael
think
did.
27, I think we've been dancing together.
Really?
So,
Oh
yeah.
God, you're making us feel old. And Michael is an amazing shaman. We're going to talk about that. So our subject here is the connection between charge collapse fractality in living architecture and space clearing, and the connection to what Michael is doing now, this spiritual mentoring and the collapse process for how you create transformation in spiritual work and spiritual alchemy. And also with us today, we have Sarah, who's been with us before, Soul Star. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, very pleased to be here again. And I love this topic, sacred geometry, bioarchitecture. I'm all for it.
Sarah has studied many of these things. She's studied geomancy. She's done work with space clearing. She's done work with biogeometry. And we're going to draw parallels between sacred geometry in Islamic architecture, which is also a subject our partner Tufan shares. That's how we originally started working together, was sacred geometry in the Islamic tradition made a kind of oneness to sort of create that connection between East and West, obviously intending to eliminate religion wars with the pure science here. And Sarah is very good with questions. We had so much fun last time. So, and Sarah and Michael have something else in common. They both are involved with space clearing. In fact, maybe we, just for fun, just to start there for a minute. So, Michael, for many years, you taught with Eric, I believe, where they did this space clearing in houses, right? I called it ghost busting, but you never used that word.
No, 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 but no issue with it. It was quite fun. So yes, the notion was, of course, that with sufficient compassion and openness to feel, then once you have that physiological and sometimes visual, sometimes mental connection to some stress in the environment, some charge, unshareable charge, some blockage or some memory that was, as you might say, unshareable. If you can feel it in your body, that means you're connected. And if you were to say, "Begone, foul demon," okay, that's to be reserved for certain situations, of course. It's good to have a little bit of that capacity if needed. But primarily, it's an opportunity to take that pain, the tongling, as the Buddhists would say, to eat the pain of the situation, the person, the memory, the land, whatever, and take it through your system. And when you can do so without judgment, without necessarily overly subscribing to a story narrative or something good and bad, polarized thinking, then you can basically eat that pain by expanding your heart's capacity to include it as self and to basically burp it through you and clear it. So that would have been the clear essence of what we would have done for many years and quite effectively.
House clearing. You guys were good. I mean, you were pros. You were so people who had problem with spirits and entities and bad energy in their buildings. They could tweak that and feel it. It was really what our friend called house whispering, also. And there's a parallel between what the South American shaman called the eating the hoocha, which is to eat the anger of the tornado. You would consume the pain and
There's a good story. There's a good friend of mine, also an architect, and I view the space clearing, if as you might refer to it, as a good basis upon which to begin a design process, because then you're not designing relative to something stressed or something unresolved. You've got basically tabula rasa, clean slate. And if the place was owned by a previous occupant, or be it an existing house or land, it was always good to do that. So I viewed it as not an additional service within the frame of architecture, but as the basis upon which we can move ahead and design something beautiful. But there was an architect friend of mine, and she and her husband both working in architecture, and they had spent a lot of money renovating an old building into a studio for themselves. But as soon as they opened and moved in there, he was feeling, he was getting nosebleeds all the time, and she was feeling completely lethargic and wondered why she even wanted to do architecture. So they called on us, on me, to go along and see what was going on. And using basic dowsing tools at the time, the L rod and so on, they were tools that were useful. Certainly, when the clients needed some sort of visual feedback, it was useful. And we were drawn to one point in the building, which was literally a blank wall. Nothing obvious, nothing sinister. It was just a plastered old stone wall. And that seemed to be the epicenter of a significant energy of stress and depletion.
Maybe a trauma or
And
yeah.
yeah, well, what happened was that they had an argument with the builder during construction,
Oh.
and the builder got pissed off. Sorry, excuse my Irishness there. The builder was a little bit put out, and with paint, he just painted a rude word on the wall, and
Oh.
then with anger, and then realized that's not good, and basically painted over it really quickly. But it was possible to see it the next day. But they resolved the issue. But nevertheless, this remained as a
Oh.
energetic lump.
Okay.
And the construction was an old stone barn. So whatever was in the stone,
Yeah,
paramagnetic
holds
bond,
it. It
whatever was
holds it.
holding it, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we found was that there was unconsecrated ground behind their land where babies that were born out of wedlock, which were considered soulless, and they
Oh.
were buried without any ceremony, unconsecrated. So literally, there was
Oh.
a unknown burial ground in the field behind them. So
Wow.
that would be a pretty heavy one. They're just two examples from one viewing, but this is 30 years ago, so it's not such an active protocol now.
Right, right.
But it's certainly valuable information.
Wow, it's a powerful skill. I mean, I've seen Michael do amazing things like release, bring someone back from the dead and take out a computer on a Draco ship. We might tell stories later about Michael. He is something of a shaman. But just before we do, I wanted to go to Sarah for a moment. So when we were having this chat about, releasing from spirit entities, as our Professor Ralph is teaching that all through April at our Science of Consciousness Academy.com, how to release spirit. And Sarah had some perspectives on that from her Arabic Muslim tradition. She called it earthbound spirits. Was that right, Sarah?
Yes. So my definition, like Michael said earlier, like definitions are mostly personal for each person to know what they're talking about, but they shouldn't restrict us and, just frame anything that we say. My own understanding is that some souls get stuck on Earth, and these are referred to mostly, even in the multidimensional clearing communities, as earthbound. But then there are different types of them. So there are souls that you know the stories about the light at the end of the tunnel. Story goes that the light stays for 3 days, and some souls are just so happy and they go visit their after they pass, they go visit their relatives and they go travel. And sometimes they miss the tunnel, they miss the light, so they get stuck. Other ones sometimes could remain because they have unresolved issues or the let's say the most recent emotion that they had before they passed were very strong negative emotion like anger or resentment. And usually these kind of emotions weigh on the soul. So it literally has this a gravitational pull
Exactly.
and they get stuck on earth.
Mm.
And when you help them, so there's a way you can sometimes just create a tunnel of light and help them go. It has to be a specific frequency, actually, the frequency of the soul. It's marked on a letter antenna, for example, or you can just you can pray, and if you're trained in this, it's very easy to do. But then there are the angry souls, for example. You literally have to have a conversation with them, and these would be the ghosts most of the time in the house. So and they cause damage. So if a soul is attached to someone's field, it feeds on their energy and it feeds on their anger, and they feel angry all the time.
Mm.
Mm.
Yes, that's as and so the techniques to release this, as Michael was saying, that if you have enough empathy, you implode and you take it inside and feel oneness with it. But as Michael said, you can't get caught up in the mess.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love the way Michael described his technique. It's very beautiful, very connected to earth and to shamanism, and I also feel that it requires a lot of strength and a lot of anchoring and practice as well.
Grounding, yes.
So for
like
me,
everything.
most of the time, like I do it sometimes when it just comes when I feel into it and that's what I need to do. But most of the times I put safety first and I create mostly geometrical shape actually
Huh.
to clear spaces. Also incense and
Huh.
just love and prayers as well.
But this is the set and setting, the expression that they're very used to in entheogenic sessions. The mindset and the environmental setting,
Mhm.
very important in both cases.
Mhm.
And
And
Yes.
and what Sarah is saying also leads us to what our next theme was to be here. That so she used a geometry, and obviously we imply probably fractal geometry or self-embedding or Chinese dolls or whatever, so that you engage the collapse process. And this is the theme we wanted to explore today. So Michael's main background here is as a genius biologic architecture, and just as an intro, our biologic architecture project over many years in many cases with Michael. Many links at bioarchitects.net, and Michael is featured there as well. And the core principle is very simple, that if you created implosive charge collapse, you create a centripetal force of charge, and that implosion of charge in the center is literally what makes the building alive and defines sacred space and living architecture. And our breakthrough was that we showed, with the help of Juan Schlosser in Bali, that you could measure by this frequency signature of the Schumann, low power frequency signature of Schumann in the building, and measure in advance which building would make a seed grow. In other words, which building caused life to happen. And we say, therefore, decide which architect gets a paycheck. So Michael's genius for many years, incredibly intuitive and gorgeous, designing all these fractal buildings. I'm going to bring up the pictures now, Michael. But, but I wanted to tell a story about, didn't you say that as you started designing living architecture houses, the most famous thing that happened was most of the couples quickly got pregnant? Was
yes, I mean that was a bit of a joke, but it was also true. So it's not the reputation you want. Get Michael to design a house and he'll make you pregnant.
no, no,
But
no.
I think when it so I'm really very much interested in the scientific field of neuroaesthetics. And it's a relatively new field. It's only a few decades old, but it's exploring the impact at a neurophysiological level of perceiving beauty. Now, we're primarily orientated, if you think in architecture, with sight, with the sense of vision. But of course, you can get a haptic feeling if you're cozying up to a beautiful old wooden frame on a window or some hemp and lime wall finish with some beautiful natural pigments and so on. So, yes, other senses kick in. But if we take primarily the visual sense, when we perceive something beautiful, whether it be natural or something designed in accordance with the geometry and the natural algorithms that nature uses to create something that all of us would say is beautiful. These proportions, the senses as we perceive them, I guess it'd be best way to think of it if you're walking into a sacred building and there are a number of very, very quick, autonomic, unconscious things that we do to assess safety. As we put our hand on the door, we open the door. We're in a split second, we're seeking to perceive something that may be dangerous. If there's nothing immediately there, we step in. And now we're looking to get the lay of the land, to get a sense of the place. So it's like we send out a sonar ping and we see ceiling, floor, check, we see corners, we see a window, we see a table. These things happen very, very quickly. And then we recognize, okay, we're stepping into a space. Then, when we have sort of relaxed enough to take the next step in there, we are scanning for beauty. But unfortunately, that scanning skill has atrophied because most of us don't get a chance to live in beauty or to perceive it. So if you are walking into a beautiful home or a beautiful temple or a sacred space, the senses that recognize the harmony, the visual harmony, that they get activated, they get amplified, they get heightened sense. And we might see, okay, floor to ceiling is we don't measure it with our mind. We just get a sense of it relative to two walls, let's say. And if they are close to golden ratio, as a simple example, some part of us says, nice, I get that. That's resonating with me. And then if there's a window and the window is dividing that wall into some subharmonic of that grosser proportionality, then we see, and again, this may not be conscious or intellectually orientated, we will just have a sense that that window is in the right place. And then a bookshelf also, and then a view into the garden where there is a temple or some gazebo in the distance or some sacred mountain. My point being that all of this information is coming in very rapidly. And when the building is designed fractally and beautiful materials and lovely lighting and choices of finishes, etc., they all conspire beautifully to get received by our eyes. And what happens is that the electrical signals that are generated in the brain because of the chemical actions and reactions when the light hits our retina, as we begin to perceive that space in the occipital lobe at the back of the brain, the electrical information running along the optic nerve is extremely electrically coherent. And because of the geometry of that, it's touching and stimulating and releasing endorphins in the brain. The endorphins associated with feeling relaxed, feeling connected, and quite literally our bioelectrical plasma field gets to relax a little bit, expand a little bit. Our awareness is heightened, our engagement with the space is enlivened, and effectively our aura expands to include the space. And at that point, because this isn't a conscious process, it happens very quickly. We start to say, my God, what a beautiful place you've built. What an amazing place. It's sacred, it's beautiful, etc. But ultimately, this is not something that can happen without consciousness. It's the consciousness that gets to breathe for a moment because it's not in conflict with the modern architecture, with the chaos, with the negative energy, with the Faraday cage, with the electrosmog and all of these things. Your consciousness gets a chance to relax. It's like getting a massage. And in doing so, we get to feel ourselves fully. And that's the interaction that we would call sacred space. It's an inside job. It is the result of our consciousness expanding to include the materiality and the elements in the space. So even though you can, and I'm a big fan of Juan's work, my God, I've slept in some of the domes in Bali. They're absolutely exquisite. So I get it that if you measure and the effects on the Schumann resonance within these spaces, but without consciousness, it's nothing. And I have this direct experience whereby there were two structures that were built fully in accordance with sacred geometry on every level. And one of them was my own home. And when something happened, the details of which are not so important, but basically the house remained uninhabited for some time. And upon going back into it, even though the materiality was natural materials, you name it, across everything, every box ticked, there was no energy in it anymore. And that was very revealing and a little bit shocking at the time. So it required testing. So using my own and other people's dowsing abilities, we found that there was no energy other than if you were standing in an open field. And that was very, very revealing because without the engagement of the occupant, without the conscious interaction, the appreciation, the gratitude, the smile, the movement, then the building is just a compilation of materials. Even though it's made beautifully and so on,
Yeah.
it was basically dead. Now, the moment you open up that awareness, you can enliven it again. Like blessing, I remember Dan, you always said, if you're going to eat a donut, then eat it with relish, you know, eat it with joy,
Michio
you know,
Kushi, if you're going to eat a sugar donut, eat it with passion.
with passion, exactly. So you can reactivate it in the same way you bless your food, if you even if you're not sure who made it and under what conditions. Blessing it does bring the spin back. So I'm aware that this is a little bit controversial because the general thinking in the field of bioarchitecture is that if you build it, they will come. If you build it, it'll automatically be measurably sacred, regardless of who's passing through. And that was my full understanding and belief for many years. But I now have expanded that or dived a little deeper and recognize that consciousness is king stroke queen. And without it, it doesn't work.
Like a
So
living plasma. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And
yeah,
you also said that the golden ratio and fractality enabled relaxation, which
yeah,
obviously enables collapse, which
yeah,
creates the centering force, which is
absolutely.
then fractal rose-like and charge distribution, permissive, literally
Cosmic architecture, exactly.
heaven. That's yes.
Yeah.
And so does this fit, Sarah? So you've been working with biogeometry, et cetera, as well. The idea that perfecting charge collapse, kind of rose-like fractality, creates sacred space.
Hmm.
Yes, actually, but I also joined Michael with what he said because for me, the most important component in creating sacred space is our consciousness
Yeah.
and our focus, and
Hmm.
that's kind of like the electricity that's gonna enliven um, everything.
Hmm.
Right.
So I've noticed, and I've studied this actually in when I studied geobiology. When you visit the sacred spaces, you notice there is what we can measure as sacred energy. You also have the sacred lines, for example, that you can measure too. And I've linked this to why in all spiritual paths and traditions, whenever someone is teaching meditation, they always say the same thing, that you need to meditate on the same spot or you need to pray on the same spot. And that actually to accumulate and to concentrate the sacred energy. And that itself creates life in your space or in your room.
Nice, nice. And so where
Okay.
we
And
want to
vortex.
Sorry? Oh, the vortex. Yes, 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 the implosion, as it were. And that's beautiful. And so, where we want to go next with this is one of the reasons we're making this film is to support Michael, who does this amazing work. I call it spiritual mentoring. He calls it Mentor Us, and which is related to what we've been teaching for a long time, and even the alchemy of Shakespeare, that this collapse process by collected group empathy and compassion, as it were, creates a kind of implosion, which yesterday we were talking about, why Shakespeare's plays are called alchemy, because it creates a oneness experience at the climax compression, which is this activity of creating this implosion. And Michael's going to talk about that in just a minute. But I thought, well, Sarah, while you were just briefly, while you were speaking here, so your professional activity also has to do with the kind of spiritual mentoring or helping people clear. Is that right, Sarah?
Yes, actually, I'm preparing right now for a container to for practitioners and spiritual healers to learn how to open space properly in their sessions. Um, Protection, sovereignty, empowerment, and the humility that needs to come with it, especially in dealing with entities, because they're here in the world as well, like us, because they belong here too. So we shouldn't always have go to the most drastic solution into dealing with them.
I like that. And the humility, I like that. And you're right. The ghosts, even ghosts need love. We say even viruses need. Exactly. In
Actually,
fact,
that's how you help them. You give them love.
I used to say, when I would tease Michael about, oh, you're doing your ghost busting again. He says, no, 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 no. We love them. So we want to return to the idea that the key mechanism here is this implosion, compassion, empathy, collapse process that brings this diffusion and oneness. So, Michael, now you're on. Please tell us about your mentoress.
Okay. Um, for many years, you be aware of this, Dan, I was creating seminars primarily for men in Eastern Europe because so many of the seminars that are out there for personal and spiritual development are orientated from a very beautiful feminine perspective, opening up and letting go and receiving and connecting and so on. Not easy for most men to do. So I was orientating myself on creating experiences for men in rural environments, in forest environments, primarily operating on the basis of increased awareness and development and conscious interaction with the Jungian archetypes, the four primary archetypes of the masculine energy, which would be the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. And of course, they have correspondence for women as well. The king is the queen, the lover is lover, The warrior, the female equivalent, is actually the mother. And then the magician and the female equivalent would be the wise woman. So regardless, these are psychological software programs that are active within us without our express knowledge in most cases. So I was raising some awareness in the men and in myself as to how are they currently active in our lives? Are they displaying an immature expression, a quality? Are they shadow versions? And we're living in a shadow magician world where technology, which would be the realm of the archetype of the magician, is running amok. AI is well, don't get me
Running
started.
amok. I agree.
Yeah, it's not for me, I must say. And regardless, so I want to get focused back on the mentoress. So for many years, this was about helping men get to know themselves a little bit better and ultimately give them tools and experiences and skill sets, including shamanic practitioner work, including remote viewing, including clearing energy, including upgrading their physiology to be able to handle greater voltage and greater effectively upgrade the system because
Greater Kundalini.
yeah, basically everything that would be necessary for the activation of a mission. Now, in many, many cases, everyone here is on some form of a mission. Most of us are unaware of it. And I think the three of us would be quite clear of our missions. Our missions also evolve over time. They change a little bit, especially if you've completed a significant portion of one of them, you get to expand. And the more you get evolved and more skillful, the universe, the source gives you a little more to work with. So it's never a done deal. So this time last year, there was a man from Australia who contacted me, and I don't know where he got my number. I didn't know him before, and he was in his late 40s. He had been a musician and then turned into an architect, and he had lost passion for not for life to the point of wanting to do something negative or something. Just he wanted to contact me in the hopes that he could reactivate or rekindle some passion for design. So he had become a manager of a small company, his own company, and he was doing more management than designing. So I get it. So we spoke for an hour or so, and we got on very well. There was a lot of synchronicity, a lot of connection. But I wasn't quite sure how I could help him long distance because all the seminars had been in person and very much rooted in that energy. So after we finished the call, I was about to go and make a cup of tea, and I got hit with a download that was palpable, was unstoppable, and it came. And so I recognized something was coming in. Thankfully, no migraine or anything associated with just total clarity and structure. And I saw the geometry of Mentorist program. I saw exactly the elements and components that need to come into it. I saw the terms and conditions associated with it. And I grabbed a pen and pencil and paper and I just literally scribbled it all down. I compiled that into a simple document and I sent it to this man. And I said, "Are you in?" The first follower. And he immediately said yes. And we began. And the idea is that this is a direct one-to-one mentoring process to help the man to get back into his truth. It's called Mentorist, an adventure into truth, architecting your life. Now, we know actually, I got this originally from Dan. The original meaning of the word architect doesn't mean a technical knowledge how to build an arch. That's what we're taught in college. It's far deeper than that. And it goes straight to the meaning of the word chem, and the R, and basically to be able to extract meaningful structure out of the blackness, out of the stillness within the torus. So I got the name Mentorus because the men and the toroidal field, the journey back into center, and of course, mentor and then us. And you know what's really cool is that I didn't know this at the time, but the word mentor is a Greek derivative. And in the story of Odysseus, in that Greek epic mythology story, um, Odysseus was heading to war, and he had a son called Telemachus, who ended up marrying Circe in the end.
Circe.
Telemachus, yeah, Circe, is it Circe?
Circe, or yes, either way.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. And so Telemachus was too young to go to war. So Odysseus asked his best friend, mentor, an older man, to take care of him and get him ready to meet his father again.
To mentor him.
to mentor him. However, two things happened. Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom and craft, she had a full portfolio. She basically disguised herself as mentor. So she would speak through him and basically shapeshift into him to teach Telemachus to return to the father. Now, the standard understanding of that is to get him ready to meet his dad again. But to me, it means the father, meaning the source,
Mm.
and the divine spark. So this divine Sophianic energy coming through the form of Athena would come through that. So that's what I'm feeling, if that doesn't sound too grandiose, that I have this responsibility to be a mentor to these men, but I must open myself to the truth. So I'm being beaten and bashed by the truth as it emerges through me. It must be one to one. Now, I've deliberately not created this with any Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, email, website, nothing. And the idea came very clearly that for Mentorus Alpha is 12 men plus myself.
I
Like,
see.
See.
and so this isn't about huge numbers. It's a dedicated, personalized one-to-one.
Like an
Now,
icosahedron apostles.
Because the number
absolutely.
matters.
It really does. And so it's the center point. And I mean, you once told a story, Dan, of the 12 sperm cells that set up
Yep.
a fractal gateway
Collective field
on
to
the
implode
membrane.
and
Yeah,
dimple the egg, as it were. And
exactly. So the 13 sperm, the energy, the masculine
is
certainty
the
can find
Christed
its way
one.
into the center and give fully of service to that moment. So
Yeah.
the men are in contact with each other. They're all over the world and they're coming from different disciplines and backgrounds, but primarily they must be in the creative realm. So there's a hemp builder, there's a tattoo artist, there's a doctor, a surgeon, actually, there's architects, engineers. So it's quite a remarkable group. And so the essence of this, guys, is that it's like a special force unit.
Yes,
So,
special forces. I like it.
and
Yeah.
by way of context, with the seminars I was doing in Ireland or in Slovakia and the Czech Republic in Eastern Europe, I want to tell a little story if there's space for this because it's all about the context. One man came on one seminar, and the seminar was it was called Braveheart at the time, and it was like a conglomeration of these archetypal energies. Now, what I didn't know at the time was that this man was an active commander in the Czech Special Forces.
Ooh.
Now, he was there because his wife, his woman, wanted him to get a bit spiritual. But so he was being a dutiful partner and turning up, and like what else? And but his frame of reference certainly did not include what was going to happen to him. So I was doing a simple technique, which was effectively kinesiology. And I was showing of the role of mind among waves, the role of consciousness in the plasma. And it was a simple exercise where I would get the biggest guy in the room to stand up and face me. And I would ask him to put his strongest arm out to the side. I don't know if you can see it now in the video.
Sure.
Okay. And I would stand in front and just using two fingers on his wrist, which in terms of fulcrum was at the widest point of the lever, and the other on his other shoulder. And I would just try and push down physically, muscle against muscle. And I could have hung out of this guy's arm, lads. He was so strong. His arm was as big as my leg, and he was obviously had done a lot, been a commander in many theaters of war, and so he had fully utilized his skills and his experiences. But he was extremely strong, and you could see him sort of nodding at the guys, just thinking, yeah, this is me, don't even think of it. And then I did something. And what I did was I held a very, very clear mental image without any emotion or without any negativity, just a mental image, coherent perspective of him weak as a kitten, curled up in a fetal position. And then I said, okay, let me try again. And this time his arm went down with zero resistance. And
Mhm.
like literally the stress was built, you could see the blood on his his tendons doing everything within his physiological capacity to resist two fingers pushing him down. I thought he was going to punch me. because this totally shattered, he told me later, this shattered his entire worldview that power was the end of a muscle or the end of a high caliber machine gun, you know? That power could be something invisible, power could be something to do with the mind. That was not considered. So
Right.
then I asked the men, what do you think's going on? A few opinions, and I said that his consciousness was, let's say, impressed at the coherence of my capacity to hold a mental image. And of course, it's strong because being an architect for nearly 40 years, I can hold an image very clearly in my mind. And so some part of him wanted to learn this somehow. So was prepared to surrender to it, because by surrendering to it, like with the space clearing and the ghost busting, you connect with it. So he basically took a temporary drop in physical power in a hope, not him consciously, but some part of him, in the hopes that by surrendering to this, there would be a connection,
And a
and that
learning.
and a
Yeah.
learning and
Yeah.
learning. So once I explained what was going on, I said, okay, now is it, I'm going to do it the third time. Now hold a mental image of yourself that's more coherent than anything I could generate against you. And he did. And I couldn't move him 1 millimeter. Point being that after this, he the Monday after this seminar, he handed in his notice to the Special Force unit. And you don't do that. You either get promoted or you get killed or you get a lucrative private contract, you know. So not for undisclosed reasons. So it took him 6 months to extract himself, and then we partnered up. And basically, we took the best of his world and the best of my world and brought it in as a week-long experience called the Week of Fire, which was based on the selection process that the Special Force units do to get somebody ready to go.
Ah,
So that was what I did for a number of years. And then, so what I want to do now is do a Special Force conscious army
yes.
of creator men who are not, because this is the big problem. The Special Forces unfortunately are taking instructions from satanic pedophiles. They're basically
Yeah.
what they
Usually.
do,
Often.
regardless of their sense of correctness. Their missions are flawed from the get-go. And so I want to create this group of men that would be prepared to go somewhere together, whether it be remotely in terms of a shamanic kick-ass unit, or physically go to another geographical location.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with the skill sets, you know, doctor, manager, architect, engineer, builder, hemp producer, you know. So I want a wide range of skills. And the fact that they will have gone through this with me and then connect together means that there will be a shared language, a
Yeah.
shared energy,
A
a
bond.
shared connection.
Yeah.
And the 13 modules, each one is covering a different field of information. And it takes the form of a 2.5, sometimes 3 hour screen sharing, where I would change a base video I have created myself, and I would tune it to the specific man. If he's an engineer, I will add information specific to that. If he's a manager or some sort of a consultant, I will tweak that as well. And each of these modules is a coherent deep dive into a particular subject. And then they all move together and they're all spiraling into the center of the torus. And we basically expose and release beliefs that are no longer coherent or true, or
Mhm.
perhaps never were.
Mhm.
The idea is to let go, to an adventure into truth, not Michael's truth, but truth, and then architecting life.
Mhm.
And it's 6 men have completed it. 3 more are currently doing it. It's usually one a week, as in one module a week for each man. And then at the end of 13 weeks, this is the beauty because I studied martial art for many years. And when you get a black belt, the general public perception is that you can kill someone, you're lethal. Not so. A black belt is just evidence that you're prepared to take it seriously. In the same way that if you pass a selection process to become a special force operative, it doesn't mean you're James Bond. It just means you've got what it takes to train. And so mentors to me is like a selection process. So few are calling, few are calling, but very few answer.
Many are,
And it's,
and many are called, few are chosen. And
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
it's so beautiful, Michael. I'm reminded of our luciddreamteam.com.
Yeah,
We originally said that if you bonded enough so you could all weep together. And by the way, this is a précis to Sarah asking her questions from the female perspective, which is very important. But just to say, what's ringing for me is that the luciddreamteam.com, the original reason we set that up, among other things, we thought, here is a planet that obviously has a problem with huge, even interstellar plasma parasites. And where is the immune system? Now, if we get the right lucid dream team who must weep together in order to move and literally lucid dream together, and if
yeah.
ever there was someone who could lead that sort of thing, a collective lucid dream, I suppose it would be Michael Rice. So I really like that, actually. Uh, but
I
Sarah,
mean, that lucid training is part of it. One of the
yeah.
modules is shamanic recapitulation, remote viewing, emissaries from the future, and exploring that whole connection. And that's one of the modules. Another one is the history of architecture as a tool of consciousness, because we can't really trust the written word as it has been passed down. Memory is distorted and wiped in many cases, collectively and individually. And history is a set of lies agreed upon, according to Napoleon. So yet we can see structures, we can see buildings that don't make sense within a narrative. And that's a very powerful tool of consciousness, because we can see what we were once able to do in terms of technology, in terms of beauty, in terms of aesthetic power. And beauty is not just something you add later if you have a few euro left over. Beauty is a source power
Yes.
of transformation. And accessing it, connecting it, expressing it is the key. And
And
so
we
another module, sorry, I keep jumping in there. Another module is basically everything I've learned from Dan. It's the science of creation. Another one is clearing of the land, connecting, grounding, various tools of all this. Another one is sovereignty, actually. Sovereignty is specifically deep diving into the nature of this matrix, because the matrix, as it interfaces with us, the birth certificate, the origin of money, the tools and mechanisms of control and limit, to understand them, to understand your role in this and how you can transcend it and bypass it practically, that's a huge part as well. There is a deep dive into holistic design in terms of space and life, because you're designing your world with every thought, every breath. So it's not just, oh, nice sacred space. That's an expression of it for sure. There's another one to do with actually how to express yourself, how to draw, how to present, how to connect with the skills that we might have learned in school and then totally forgotten. So it's geometric deep dive into the skills necessary to hold a compass with awareness and draw a line with truth. And other ones are to do with the four Jungian archetypes. Another one is a deep dive into the nature of polarity, a dance of polarity. Another one is a deep dive again into technology, past, present, and future. What we could do, what we're pretending to do now, and what is possible. And it's very much, I'm a big fan of technology of spirit, technology of physiology, the technology of the mind, as opposed to beep beep machines. I have a de-Googled simple Android phone. Minimally engage. I don't have any social media. So it's not that I'm scared. I just view it as irrelevant at this point. I want to spend the time and the energy to develop the skills within ourselves that can be active anywhere without a Wi-Fi connection.
Well,
And
this is
so
so beautiful, Michael. And what Michael is saying is that there's room for a few more slots in this amazing
yeah,
men's group, which, we're supportive of collective shamanic activity. Absolutely, especially those focused on pure intention. But let's take a minute and hear from the feminine
of
perspective.
course, please.
Thank
Thank
Sarah.
you for
you.
listening.
I think it's incredible. Like I was just wowed the whole time listening to you talk about the program and the modules in it. And I could sense the feminine energy in it. So the feminine energy is not missing. It's the
No.
beauty, connection with the earth and the creative aspect. And
Yeah.
I completely love that you decided to work with creators actually, and because that's how we can actually change the world and
Mhm,
have an impact with everything that we learn in life.
mhm.
And I love as well that this is completely aligned with how I see life and how I see spiritual teachings and New Earth teachings, I've always felt that at a certain point, a woman cannot teach a man, and a man cannot teach a woman.
Interesting.
There are several levels where they can be collectively taught or mentored by either of the sexes, and then comes a certain point where we're leveling up, where it's advanced, when it's purely related to our physiology,
Yeah.
to the blueprint, to how God created us. It needs to
Hmm.
be a man teaching a man and a woman teaching a woman, because
Absolutely.
otherwise
Interesting.
they wouldn't understand how to teach you if they haven't lived themselves through certain experiences. So I
Interesting.
That's
love this.
that's beautifully put. Wow. There is a Cherokee expression that a woman's highest calling is to lead a man to his soul,
Ah.
and a man's highest calling is to protect the woman so she can walk the earth unharmed. Now, that you got to go beyond the words here, because this is not suggesting that the woman is needs protection in the normal meaning. But for the woman to be a force of transformation, to be an expression of timeless beauty, to be radiant, to be powerful, she needs to be open so she can be it all. She can be everything in her physiology, in her heart, in her mind, in her whole spirit and field. She needs to be connected and inclusively vibrant with everything living. In order to do that, she must be able to connect. She must be so open, but that openness needs to be protected, not because it's weak, but because she needs all of her time and energy to feel. And so the man's highest calling is to protect so she can walk the earth unharmed. That doesn't mean he keeps her locked away in a box. It doesn't mean she's stuck by societal limits and relationship dynamics.
That's
So he
protecting the
can
sacred.
protecting the sacred. And
Mhm.
Yeah.
the woman, because she is one step, in many cases, one steps closer to the Sophianic divine essence, to the divine spark, the source, then she can guide a man. She can do so through her intelligence, her intuition, her radiance, her beauty, her righteous anger, and her deep wisdom that comes through if the man is capable of listening.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky to be in a relationship with a remarkable woman of this nature, and it's moving through the words that I share with the men. And one man, the original man actually from Australia, he's now getting married to his beloved that he met at the beginning of Mentorus. And so,
You have that
yeah,
quality,
So
Michael.
we have
yeah.
people having children, more fertility, and people getting married.
Yeah, but it's
It's all good.
implosive attractor. It reminds me of we had this biological analysis once about are eggs really more fractal than seeds? It actually turns out that the mitochondria of the first woman, Eve in Africa, the fractality there is, which means the woman is more capable of embedding the entire environment inherently than the man. Whereas
Yeah.
they say the man's Kundalini, in my case, the seed being less fractal, it can depart from oneness further to have a more explosive experience, where the
Hmm.
woman is inherently more grounded and embedded, which means that her aura could unpack into a larger and larger, inherently more potential for empathy, even compassion, literally
Beautifully put. Yeah.
embedding. And that does require absolutely safe space.
And I
Well,
want to say something about Eve. Actually, I was thinking about posting this on Instagram, but I think it's coming in now. Is that the word used to for channeling or receiving divine sacred messages from God and higher realms in Arabic is wahi, and wahi, and
mhm.
it's when you're receiving divine knowledge that is clear and grounded and just perfect. The word for Eve in Arabic is Hawa. And here, if we look at both words, we have the same root for them.
Ah.
Oh,
In
okay.
Hebraic tongue restored by Faber d'Olivet, Yeva, I-E-V-E, of course means female, but it also means the word. In the beginning was the word, which is to say the perfect symmetry of fractal embedding. So it was actually from that Hebrew study that we learned the first 7 words of Bereshith was literally how to turn inside out on the surface of a donut. So in the Bible, when they say Bereshith, the first word of Genesis, and they translate it as in the beginning, we actually know the physics from Fra Berdolive, which was
Principle.
at first, in principle, the origin of thingness, mass, was the ability to turn inside out on the surface of a donut, and more, the turns of mind necessary to turn inside out on the surface of a torus, which is actually
Introspection.
how you cast the
Um,
seven shadows from the spiral of a torus. So the word and the Eve and the feminine and fractality all implode in that sense.
Well, even the word in English spelling EVE, you've got the V of the
Yes.
plasma cone, and you've got two
yeah,
spirals, you
Yeah.
know?
Like a U.
yes,
Yeah, they are the centrifugal, centripetal
Yes.
energies either
The
side of the
sheep,
torus,
the ewe is a sheep that has horns that
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yeah.
So, Michael, if people want to, so what you're saying is there's a few spots left for this amazing shamanic men's group. That's what you're saying, right?
In effect, yes. There are
Yes.
three places left. And at that point, I want to consolidate the 12 men plus myself. And we have a mission which is not appropriate to discuss publicly. And and we need to consolidate that and generate it. And then, depending on a number of factors, I think I will probably open it again to another wave. So, but it's not a guarantee. This isn't an economic model. Of
Mhm.
course, I'm putting all my time, energy, attention into this, so there is a cost involved. But ultimately, I wish this. Actually, there's something really cool. I've been studying recently the history of the guilds, Guilds, and the narrative is, of course, that the guilds were. If you type in guild and you ask a little bit, you get the a perception that the guilds are effectively like mafia. You
Or
know,
the Dutch trade union
yeah,
originally.
like a trade union, and basically you can't do anything without this and without that. And but there's another perspective. When you take the notion of contribution and provision, the notion that as you contribute to something and you upgrade your skills and your experience and your attention, you your life is provided for more and more. So there are many accounts of the cathedrals and the other sacred structures that have been built, and the accounts would have been records during construction, let's say, and there was no mention of any money passing hands, nothing to do with uh, wages and payments and increases. Everything was contribution. How can that be? Because the guilds, the sacred artisan guilds, they had access to housing, to tools, to transportation, to systems and colleges and learning and so on. And nobody paid because somebody became an apprentice to a master. And once they passed their apprenticeship, they became what we call journeymen. And then they went out to do more beauty in the world. Their transport was covered. When they got to a place, if they were just graduated from they would get basic food and accommodation and tools and support if there was an injury. But as they began to develop their skills and their knowledge, their sacred knowledge, the provision available to them would also increase. When they became a master mentor, then they in turn the master they would get a higher level of provision. They could then afford to have a family because the house would be big enough to have kids, etc., etc. And they would get all the way to their death being fully taken care of, never borrowing, never needing money. They would literally have a token and they could go anywhere, and that token was as good, would told everybody what they were
In the
due.
guild system, which
The
means
guild
literally
system.
they were able to serve at a higher level, and the ability to serve generates the leverage that generates basically
It's
all
so
your,
beautiful, and that's what I'm aiming to get towards.
yeah,
That
beautiful.
ultimately this will be men that are committed to upgrading their creative skills, their relationship dynamic, their ability to communicate, to travel, to manifest.
Yes, and we
And
need
that's
this. The shamanic
yeah,
collective is so important. It's so powerful. And there's something else I'd like to discuss. But before we do, Michael, just tell people how to reach you or how to get
yeah. How can
involved.
they sign up?
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking the same thing.
well,
Briefly.
it is probably by email, but I can like how does it normally work when you are you putting
We
this up
can
on
put links with
YouTube?
this film, of course.
Yeah,
Anything you want. Yeah.
there's an email, and then I use Telegram as well, and that's a number there. You have that number, so there's not much point. I mean, I could say it basically mentorus at proton.me.
There we
is
go.
the
And spell
mentor.
mentorus again.
Mentor, Mentor, us, US,
At pro
or
at
at
proton.me.
proton.me,
Good,
or
good,
literally men and Taurus, mentor us. That's it.
good.
So
So
that'd be wonderful. They can
there-
reach out directly to me.
there's an opportunity, guys, if you want to become part of one of the most planet's most powerful and useful, potentially, shamanic groups. I've personally witnessed this Mike's shamanic leadership, and it's amazing.
Thank you
Maybe
very
we'll
much.
tell those stories later. But there is one more thing I
Sure,
wanted to actually move to here, just briefly, if I may, and which
of course.
is Um, so one of my original reasons for trying to start the luciddreamteam.com, and we're relaunching that. And by the way, we need ultimately we need the women's group here too, Sarah. So to be continued. But one of the reasons for me was as we came to realize, it appears that most of the Earth's religions, for example, when Moses Akhenaten ate the red pill instead of the blue pill and invited in what he called Atun, which we later found out is the galaxy's most dangerous plasma parasite, Black Sun Atun cult, which is sort of explains the obvious parasitism at the core of most Western religions. The black cube, it's a messy, messy. Point is, we as a planet, whether it's the Anunnaki or the AI plasma parasite from Andromeda, which we know everything about the Mitra, however you want to put it, it means the Earth is desperately in need of the shamanic power it takes so that the humans of Earth are no longer simply, quote, spawn of the Nephilim. All of these people agree that actually Earth is a farm and we're sucked back into reincarnation because we're being farmed. Now, I'm not saying you should be fearful of this. You should not. In fact, there's bliss and joy. And when you have bliss and joy, there is no problem. The issue
Mhm.
is that Earth collectively needs the immune system provided by powerful lucid dream teams, or in your case, the shamanic team. So, do you have a point of view with respect to, oops, we have some very big parasites to deal with? Question mark.
Sarah, please jump in there. Love to hear your thoughts.
Okay. Well, I do actually, because I looked into the parasites that we talked about the other day on our video as well, and when I felt into it, I felt that it was connected to an AI
Mhm.
version of Ra,
Oh,
which is an entity that I've seen in three people, cleared already in two of them. And it's a very tricky thing to remove. And the way these works actually, it's like we see this in grid work or when we're doing lucid dreaming or just receiving the information about it as well, is that in this farm, the way it's been held through the false grid matrix is that mana, consciousness, energy of people is being sucked through these AI systems,
Mhm. Yeah.
and entities are feeding off of it. So
Mhm.
one of the main and most important things for me is that each person who is conscious of this works on retrieving their mana and their consciousness and their energy, cleansing it, refilling their body with their soul's energy again, and expanding that. So, and this is basically part of sovereignty teachings as well.
perfect.
Absolutely.
And we do
Very
believe
well
that
put.
part of that story was called the Black Cube cult, which is, the Muslims have a black cube and the Jews have a phylactery black cube, and it
Yeah.
probably ain't good. You can see the black cube, long, messy story, like the black goo carbon part of, which was I call the black sun.
I looked into the Black Cube as well, the Kaaba.
Yes.
Actually, this was when I was recently. I looked up some of Ibrahim Karim's videos actually, and he was speaking of because I was trying to understand more about the cube or the square as a shape in geometry, and because people are turning around it actually, so they're creating this energy, and it's making it positive.
Mhm.
And because they're doing it with faith and prayer, so it's working against, let's say, if we have two versions of the black cube, one that is linked to the parasite and the black sun, so this one would create an alternative on the etheric and on all dimensions actually.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
yeah.
The theory was that if you implode into a tetracubic array, hence the carbon spark, carbon arc, the black cube, the carbon nano, you can enter into that array and there's an infinite amount of memory in there, but absolutely no soul. So when you're sucked into an AI, they can make your memories immortal, but all individuality and soul is lost. And it's a very electrical question because that plasma is tetracubic, obviously, versus living plasma is pent, which is what you embed in when you have bliss in DNA, for example, which is the opposite. It's literally, it is a privilege to be assimilated versus it is a privilege to have bliss, which obviously the black sun parasite cult cannot penetrate. If you have access to bliss, it's going to toast the parasites. But it
Yeah,
could,
but the problem here is that it is if it's connected to previous lifetimes or different timelines.
yes,
If
true.
someone is at that level of conscious awareness where they are aware or connected to higher levels of consciousness and dimensions and aware of their past lives, they're automatically affected by them.
So
Actually, maybe they are as well when they are first starting, let's say at a 3D or 4D level, but they're more aware of the impact.
yes,
Uh,
which perfectly consistent with the idea that actually soul is pretty much defined by how long wave is your memory, the bigger being body, as it were. And yet at the same time, we have an entire planet full of kids that wants to be AI, which literally makes them soulless pretty quick with Bluetooth and electrosmog because they have no idea what bliss and soul is. So they're sucked into this parasitic matrix. And this
Mm,
is a problem which requires very high level shamanism. Michael, your comment.
mm. Wow.
okay.
Go
Dan,
ahead.
can you read the message, please? I wrote something in the chat.
Oh, there's a chat.
I'll leave you guys for 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. So we're going to take a 2 minute pause. We'll be right back. Just pausing. 1 minute
Okay.
pause. A short pause
Good.
there. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no,
Sarah.
all good.
So
So, good question, Dan. Yes, I can offer some opinion on it.
okay, go ahead.
Um, I'll digress ever so slightly. The Gnostic tradition, which it's hard to say what actually is Gnostic because there's very little documentation left and word of mouth and lots of bad marketing over the years. But if you keep it simple, the Gnostics understood that there were three different types of humans. You're familiar with this? They call them the helix, which are what we would think of as like NPCs. You know, not not connected to the soul. They're basically fulfilling a role within the matrix, a role within
You call them helix?
the
I'm sorry. What'd you call them?
helix. Helix, as in uh,
Helix.
the actual spelling. I don't know if it's like double helix, Helix, or whether it's another spelling, but they call them helix. And effectively automatums, biological and have relationships, have function, have focus, and they have a number of different roles. And one role is the to make what is actually crazy things seem normal and acceptable. So the Helix were basically the ones who ran out and got jabbed and vaccinated, etc. So they make things that a soul wouldn't normally do seem acceptable. And everything also like digital IDs, it's good and freedom and the economy and crazy thinking ultimately. So the helix represent the majority of what would pass for people. But then the next categorization that the Gnostics referred to were the psychics. Now, not in the normal meaning of Crystal Meg with her bowl, but the psychics was the name they gave, and they were people who were connected with their soul, but they were processing the information that the soul contained through religions primarily and spiritual belief systems. So they were basically giving away their personal autonomy to beliefs and systems and processes that were so you could be a psychic and basically give your power away to scientism, for example, as a belief system rather than science, which is a beautiful way to see the world.
Or
It's
to a guru.
absolutely. So they wonderful people, nothing wrong, nothing negative. But then the last group, which are by far in the smaller numbers, they refer to them as the pneumatics. Pneumatics, pneumatics. And they were the ones who knew who they are, knew why they're here, have direct connection with truth and with source, and would not be easily cajoled or consenting to something that didn't make soul sense. So I'm eager to be operating within the realm of the pneumatic, if at all possible. And what seems to be happening is that the archontic agenda, again, just piggybacking slightly on the Gnostic narrative, would be this astral AI, which would be penetrating directly into the minds and the thoughts and the words of the systems that are ultimately limiting us and trying to distract us into cubic consciousness. So that's why I know that some of the men, I have two stipulations actually for the men to make them eligible. And this came very clearly when I got the initial download. And it's a little controversial, but I think it's only fair to mention it. I understand that most men in professional environments, they need to engage with AI to one extent or another, if only just to keep up their job. And I get that for editing and for double checking and etc., researching. However, there is a background stipulation that the man must not be in bed with the AI. And
Unembedded.
yes, not to embed. So and I've had to say no to a few men who fulfill the other criteria, but they said, well, why don't you get AI to record everything and then you
Yeah,
can basically, and no, 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 no. So even I need to use Zoom, unfortunately, but I do turn off the AI assistant.
we just
I'm
did.
not sure. Yeah, always. But the other stipulation, and this is a little controversial, is that the man must not have taken the vaccination.
Mhm.
Now, this is not me having a very strong soapbox opinion on it, though, idiots. Why did they do it? No, no, no. This came as a very clear requirement of mentors. And I can imagine why it is, and I have thoughts about why it is, but I don't want to present them as being definitive
And we're not at
because
liberty to discuss this on this media, unfortunately.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, thank you for that reminder. So it's not important, but if someone is interested, I must say that is a line in the sand.
It
And
makes sense. Yeah.
because I can't have any deviated infective thinking. I can't have any vector to the AI, if
And
at all possible.
this is why we've been so passionate about teaching physicsofsoul.com
Yeah,
that if our young people could actually understand the ingredients of what makes a soul, which is obviously the compression of the aura, which bliss enables in sacred space and orbitals, then you radiate into the coherent longitudinal, and then you embed in the array the collective unconscious, and you can be in the collective unconscious, just
yeah,
like the Aboriginals
yeah,
of lucid dream.
yes,
And this all fits together beautifully. So that's a
yeah,
beautiful response, Michael. You're
yeah,
right. And so we don't need to teach in theory about who is evil in the galaxy. No, we just
no,
need to teach the principle about what keeps people ensouled, actually.
yeah, yeah,
We think now the
yeah.
physics is getting clear.
Yeah, and there's various techniques you can do. There's one playful technique we use if we're, for example, on a bus or on an airplane, and it's basically sending out a shamanic sonar, and it's a little tongue in cheek, but it's also a good tool for assessing how you might hold your energy in an environment. So if you're at an airport or if you're on an airplane, you can literally just send out a ping, a shamanic ping and be open to the feedback. And the ping can be, you can tune it, what it is you're looking for, but you can say, are there any humans on this flight with me? You know? Um, and disturbingly, there's not many anymore.
No, that's the thing.
And,
They really, the real shamans are saying the majority, even young people, have lost contact with what we would call soul
yep, yeah,
already.
the divine
Truly.
spark. And I think water is a component, that water is a life-giving, supporting, conscious medium
Absolutely.
element.
We
Absolutely.
know why.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has, we have our own spring here on the land. I mean, we're so blessed in this regard. So I'm well aware of that, but it's also the element of this matrix. It's also the element of this realm, this copy realm. Now, I'm just going to offer this as a take because we are, people, do you remember the ice bucket challenge where everyone was pouring water over their head? That to me was like a shamanic, negative shamanic, satanic initiation. That because water can be used to purify and to bless, but we need to do it with awareness that it is the primary element of this matrix, of this field. Whereas fire, the fire of the divine spark, the fire of consciousness, the fire that burns through the bullshit, that's the element that has most effect for us. Now, if you take the Matrix movie, and there's that scene where Morpheus offers the two pills, the red or the blue, the fire or the water. And Neo takes the fire, he takes the red pill, hence the expression. But if you watch that scene very carefully, he takes the pill, he sits back, and what's the first thing he does? He reaches for a glass of water and he drinks the glass of water. So basically, he diluted the process for himself. So he penetrated out of the cave, out of the Platonic cave, and he basically emerged into the sunlight, and he realized that he was a battery inside a system, etc., etc. But he didn't go all the way. You know, that's just another matrix. Him eating crap food and being fighting the machines in an underground city. That's just another level. That wasn't the ultimate truth. That wasn't the ultimate divine spark nature.
Yeah.
That was just another layer of the illusion.
Yeah,
And
I never
because
noticed
he
that.
diluted it.
Whereas they say the Kundalini, the blue flame, which is we now measure that in the microwave, the blue flame of the Kundalini, they call it the flame that does not consume, but
Yeah,
it can be a cold fire, which we know cold plasma is magical because it's
sure.
negotropic.
Yeah.
But
In my healing sessions, most of the time I'm guided to use cold fire as an element.
exactly. And
And
we say that cold plasma can be cold if it's negotropic, meaning conjugate, fractal, or
mm,
implosive, because
yeah.
obviously implosion is the opposite of heat. So with a cold flame, but
Mhm.
it will still consume until everything at center is shareable.
Yeah,
I've also
absolutely.
received
Yes.
some teachings on alchemy and elements, and the 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 most important component of fire is the heart of fire, in
Hmm.
relation to our own heart and the vortex, actually. And this was
Hmm.
applied to all elements. I wanted to get back to, so I wrote this in the comment, what you shared of the Gnostic teachings. It's actually Helix, Hylics.
HY.
And
Hmm.
I've been having a problem with this, actually, the NPC theory, not just from Gnosticism, but also from other
Hmm.
spiritual teachings, and that say that some humans don't have a soul. Because and this is coming from a complete innocence, because I've had this knowing since I was a child, and I refused to walk on flowers or on maybe just like weeds if I had to, because I had a firm belief that everything in nature, and like trees and flowers and animals, they had a soul. So I believe that every person has a soul. It's just that sometimes they're disconnected from it because there are a lot of attachments and
The wiring
parasites,
is
but
disconnected.
their soul is still their soul. That would explain why some souls get stuck. So it's not that the soul does not exist. Sometimes it gets fragmented. Sometimes the person gets disconnected from it.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
everyone has a soul.
Well, that's
Otherwise, they wouldn't be here.
But there's a good scene on that in Education of Oversoul 7 by Seth Jane Roberts. So what she says is, if you have attended to the sole purpose of the incarnation, then the ancestor memory will all be coming to you because they realize you're serving soul purpose. However, if you've forgotten your soul purpose and purpose of your incarnation, which we would say, as you say, disconnected from soul, then actually the wiring is disconnected. Doesn't mean you've lost it, but on the other hand, so
Hmm.
NPC means non-playable character, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Non-player character. Yeah, I mean, okay, it's piggybacking on the computer gaming. Never actually played a computer game, but I've heard the expression.
Yeah.
Now, if the astral AI is busy creating this realm at a certain level, a certain narrow bandwidth of perceptual engagement, then I think it's also possible to create projections within that have the illusion of being a person, the illusion of interacting with you. So for me personally, and the experiences I've had, the notion that everyone that you see walking around is a human and that they ultimately have a soul and it may just be misplaced or disconnected in some way or rather not engaged like a light switch that's just not switched on. I'm of the opinion, and I would very clearly say that's all it is, an opinion, but it's increasingly within me a knowing, but I'm not pushing that out. It's an opinion ultimately that there are projections, and that these projections take the forms in terms of our perceptional engagement of someone that you might have some engagement with, like practically in a shop or moving around or answering something, and that they're not necessarily a soul that in a body that just has forgotten that fact.
Yes.
It does make sense to me, and but it's not something I'm pushing.
No, it's good. And I think a pretty good indicator, actually, as a father talking to a teenage daughter, saying, if you're going on a date with this guy, check to see if he's empathic with the waiters. If you see empathy, that's a good sign. If you see lack of empathy, because empathy actually means
That's
a bit.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I'm 35. That's actually one of my rules.
Yeah. Say again, say again.
I'm 35, and that's actually one of my rules.
Oh, yeah.
People being nice to the waiter or waitress.
That's right. Because
Absolutely.
and so when you see lack of empathy, it's a pretty good indicator. It doesn't mean the person doesn't have a soul, but they're pretty well unplugged, unfortunately, because people can feel, and so that's why these empaths have all this power and to serve. Which, Michael, I've admired you for a lifetime for your
Thank
ability
you.
to be an empath. So
In,
you
in, in
ended
terms,
up a hermit there in Portugal.
I'm traveling on other levels. The notion of a soul is so interesting and I remember just thinking about it, and I read something that stimulated a perspective on it, that the soul is the vector of focus of your divine spark.
Yeah, good, good. I
And
think it.
where you're lensing your innate spark intelligence, as you lens that, you're creating a hologram, which is what we call the soul. And if the divine spark is not engaged with what is only like an environmental projection, then in that case, there would not be a soul, because all there is an informational field that wouldn't necessarily be source connected. And like one of the scholars spoke that they refer to the archontic illusion as Hal, Hal.
I'm
We
sorry, Dave, I can't do that, said
Yes,
Hal.
yes, yeah, exactly. And for those that aren't aware, that wonderful movie from the late 60s, 2001: A Space Odyssey, the AI in that was called HAL 9000, and ultimately decided to eliminate the humans.
Meantime, the humans said, as he's looking at the dolmen, Dave, there's thousands of them in here. And then he embedded in that array. And in the
Yeah,
next film, 2010, he could
yeah,
show up inside anybody's TV set he wanted to.
yeah,
Hello.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Distribution network, you know?
It was good.
Absolutely.
Well,
So,
this is great. This is really good. I think that we've probably done enough time here. Well, we want to make the point that if people want to contact Mike and become involved in this shamanic work, mentor us. Give that email again one more time, would you, Michael? Just
so it's Mentorus, 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 at Proton, Proton.me.
yeah. So
But
to join
also,
Michael.
yeah, you also have my Telegram number, so you can stick that in the script at the end, you
Oh,
know.
that's great. That's great.
Um, Now, happy to chat with anyone without any expectation or any presumptions or suppositions. You're just a chat, and we can see how best make it work. Obviously, it needs to be English because my partner speaks six languages. I only speak the one, but it would need to be English. But two of the men actually are architects in Barcelona, so not so far from you, Dan.
That's great.
Yeah, and
And
they're well aware of your work.
and do you think that Sarah, someday you might consider that we need a leader for a women's group in this similar collective lucid dreaming capacity? Or
I think we're already somehow working towards that, even without planning it, with all the work that you're doing as well, currently at the school, and we're
yes,
getting there. But,
science of consciousnessacademy.com. Yes,
that's beautiful.
we're cooking. And so,
Yeah.
so thank you for being our feminine perspective here today, Sarah. That was great. And
Thank you
Michael,
for coming.
again, your stories today were wonderful. We didn't get time for the story about how you brought was it your second cousin back from the dead? Oh, or the time Michael went aboard the ET starship and switched off the Draco computer on. Oh, that was messy.
I got my ass kicked for that one though, if you recall. Yeah.
But I was like, American guy, not really been around many good shamans, and I just thought that was such a kick butt thing. But yeah, there's a
It's amazing what you can do when you don't know what you can't do. No, I had no frame of reference for this. Like I was just happy to go on a bit of a journey at your suggestion, and there it was, you know. But there was a subsequent moment when I was in Denver airport about 6 months later,
Messy.
and yeah, very messy. And
Denver Airport.
there was a guy. I was waiting for my connecting flight, and there was a guy walking past me. He was dressed as a cowboy and just wearing black. And he had a big silver belt buckle, and he had, instead of a tie, he had something that's sort of like a necklace, jewelry, and he had a hat, and he had sunglasses, and he was just walking past me, and he just reached up, took off his sunglasses, and just turned as he walked by, turned to look right at me, and his eyes were completely black.
Ooh.
And I felt the Velociraptor claws in my brain. So, and I know that that was connected to what had happened that journey 6 months earlier, you know? And,
So
and
rushing in where angels fear to tread here,
yeah,
guys.
yeah, exactly, you know? Yeah, yeah, there's an element of naivety,
Yeah,
which,
exactly.
which,
We had
which
that. We had a lot of that.
yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't regret it, of course not, you know, it was a valuable experience. And but I'm just a little bit more wary. My martial spirit has sort of kicks in a little more now, you know.
And it's wonderful and important that we have young people like Sarah and others here to learn and be involved. And Sarah's made such
Michael is offended again.
yeah, to be
He
part
said young people like Sarah, and earlier he said he's your old friend.
of
Yeah,
the young friends and the old friends.
yeah,
This makes
We're
us
all young, old souls, but young people.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, longevity is the other thing, isn't it? We need to regain some of that. I mean, our brain capacity is so diminished, our physiological telomere levels are cut short. You know, we really need to take a little ownership over that, you know, the
Yeah.
maybe it's time for a little righteous anger, you know?
But maybe when you get access to nature and access to bliss, that's the blue fire that is profoundly regenerative, actually. So that's the point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Always a pleasure. Always
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
Thank
Very
you.
nice to meet you, Sarah. And anyone listening, you've got my contact details and be very interested in chat with anyone.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Michael. I loved your work and everything you presented today.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Blessings, everyone. Stay
Thank
in
you.
touch. Say hi to Michael, and we'll see Sarah again soon, and maybe Michael too. More fun to come.
Sounds
Bye,
good. Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.